Okay, so we're all here to figure out how to build email lists that drive growth and revenue. Today, we're going to try and cover as much as we can in half an hour, but essentially, we're looking at why these lists even matter, foundational steps to building them, advanced growth strategies for scaling our email lists, using them as engagement and retention tools, and then I'm sure what everybody is looking forward to is the monetization opportunities. And then we'll just open the floor for any questions at the end. That's usually where we like to stay. And so I'll try and get through the data as fast as I can, and then we'll just open it up and have some meaningful conversations. And so why build? And Eric, I'm so sorry, but if you could make sure I'm letting everybody in, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Because yeah, oops, not bad. Okay. So the purpose of building email lists, as I'm sure everybody is familiar, like we don't own any of our audience when we're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Anytime we're using a platform, even like Spotify for the, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, like we don't actually own those lists. And so that's what they want because they want to be able to charge you and do everything that they want to do because you're their client essentially, and they want to make as much money off of you as possible. And so with an email list, though, this is where we actually own our data. We own these clients. We own these subscribers. We have their contact information. We have their names. We basically have anything that we're asking them to provide to us in exchange for being on our email list. And so one of the things that I'm not sure if everybody is actually knows, but from a marketing perspective, it's a wide known fact that email subscribers are 6 times likely more to engage with your content, whether you're a podcaster, whether you're a content creator, whether you're producing anything online. That is a hard stat, and that's a great stat. And so when it comes to utilizing the lists that we actually own, monetization opportunities follow, boosting in listener retention follow, and also the opportunity just to directly access your audience. No algorithm barriers, nothing that is blocking you from getting direct to these subscribers or listeners. And so we'll extrapolate along the way. However, this is just basically summarizing some high level points, and we'll send you all this presentation after so you can read over whichever part you find valuable. As we get into our actual building of our email list, again, just reiterating the fact that this is, as all of your podcasters, this is actually your most valuable audience because, again, you own them. So when we're building and comprising our email list, we want to do very similar steps to what we would do as creators in the podcast space. So identifying our target audiences, choosing the right email marketing platform, and then create compelling lead magnets. Because as you all know, nobody wants to do anything that's boring or isn't adding value to them. And so these are really great practices. And Eric's going to touch on quite a few that he's done because, in 8 years, he's got a lot of great case studies and a lot of trial and error. And so, last year, for example, if y'all had gone onto his website, you would have noticed, his AI ebook, which actually did really well as an e-gen tool. And sorry to out you, Eric, but I think it was highly done on ChatGPT and then outsourced to someone over Fiverr to just create the graphics. So really low cost, but very high outcomes. And so we can talk a little bit more about that as we go along. I just wanted to identify
Shannon,
some of the platforms. Mm-hmm.
yeah, one more thing. I think when we talk about email lists too, I've felt what I really enjoy about my email list is that it's actually a way to engage both ways with your listeners. So, when we're throwing content out there as a podcast, there's no way really, I mean, there are ways, of course, but for people to kind of come back at you with thoughts or feedback when you have an email list, it allows you to have that reciprocation of communications that is pretty cool as a podcaster. You can get a lot of valuable feedback, and you can we'll talk about ways where that can then turn into surveys and you get more input, and it creates a feedback loop with your audience that wouldn't exist if you just had your podcast alone. So just another thought of why to do it.
100%. And so in case some of you were not already utilizing this as a medium, here are 6 email software platforms that we highly recommend. Eric, I believe, used ConvertKit. Some of our other clients, ActiveCampaign, MailChimp. MailChimp tends to get a little bit pricey, but if you're going to use it to its full capacity, I would say it is worth it. But the chances that you are going to do that in the first year building out your email list is quite low. So I would opt for something like a Brevo, $8 a month. There's a lot of like intro offers out there, but these are all that like we can vouch for. They all are great and will all have the capability of doing everything that we are going to present in this webinar. So again, we just comprised all of like the benefits for each, but you guys can go through that after if you're looking for a new email marketing platform. Then we get a little bit more into the tactical, so strategies for actually growing your email list. So we talk about things like lead magnets, websites and landing pages, social media promotion, podcast call to actions, and then collaborations and partnerships. And so, Eric, I think you're going to expand a little bit on some of these strategies, what's worked for you, where you see the most traffic, where you see the most monetization in terms of sponsorship opportunities. So I'll let you kind of speak to some of these, and then we'll get into the weeds a little bit more with some actionable things that we can do.
Yeah, from a tactical perspective, I mean, there's some really easy ways to create lead magnets. The one that Shannon was talking about that I had last year was, the 2024 AI report, and really, I mean, you could do something as simple as take a theme within your podcast. Maybe it's strength training for women. Maybe if you've had 2 or 3 or 4 interviews which have focused specifically on strength training for women, or strength training as a category. I'm thinking like you, Brandon, like you can put all that stuff into a GPT or a Claude, put it all in and say, hey, write me one singular report on the takeaways for strength for 2024, 2025 trends. Put that all into an ebook. That can be done in like 10 minutes. You can send it off to Fiverr, have someone make it look really nice with your branding, and then you have an ebook. Like that's all it really takes. And then you just talk about it on your podcast, in your intro, or whenever you have any kind of opportunity to speak on someone else's podcast, you can capture through that way. And it doesn't have to be complicated. The one I did last year for the AI report, I actually went out and reached out to, and this is where collaboration comes in, about people specifically within the AI world. So I think it was Omri from V, who now I turned out to be an advisor and a client. Joel Jameson about coaching data. A couple other people just in that world. Got some quotes from them, put them into a report along with my what I pull from ChatGPT and the transcripts of my podcast. And super easy. It was done in under $100, and it turned out looking really good. As far as websites and landing pages, I think this is something that a lot of podcasters may not have yet. It doesn't have to be complicated. Mine was built on podcastpage.io, which is a very specific framework for developing a website for your podcast. Very clean, very fresh. You can have someone do it, or you could probably figure out, if you're somewhat technical, how to do it yourself. So none of this stuff has to be really complicated or expensive. I think that's another thing that I was sitting at a mastermind last week and everyone thought podcasting is super expensive. I'm like, it's actually, no, it's not, right? After you kind of get started, it's actually fairly inexpensive. So just some general ideas on all of this, but on the call to actions, it's a really easy way to direct people. If you're on another podcast, like Brandon, you're on a lot of podcasts, Jay, you're on a lot of podcasts, where you get on, you can say, hey, direct them to futurefitness.co. There's a nice AI report you can download for free. We have the podcast playbook that we use for ours. You can send them to our website, download the free playbook. So it's still a very, lead magnets have been around forever, but they're still a very viable option. You can also use webinars. Like we're doing right now. You can do co-promotional webinars. You can do live recordings. You can do a lot of different things that send people to a sign up to build your email list as well. So creativity is abound when it comes to these things, but those are some very specific tactical ways that you can do it. The lead magnet report thing is no brainer. Just I can't emphasize. If there's one thing I would say you could do right now is like go look at any specific themes within your content, pull those transcripts, throw them into ChatGPT, tell them you want a 3-page report on it, and then send it off to Fiverr and get it branded.
Another software that it's been around for a little bit, but I've started to use it more. It's called Typeset. And they have like a really good intro. I think it's like $29 a month, and it literally takes all your content and creates the ebook for you. It's wild. But yeah, it's called Typeset, and it's getting better and better. And so I definitely recommend that. That's another way to cut out going to Fiverr or someone to create an ebook for you. Now I'm gonna kind of switch gears here and talk about once you employ some of these strategies, some of the things that you're definitely going to want to do, personalized welcome sequences. So you'll probably notice anytime you sign up for anyone's anything, like you're going to get a welcome sequence, and it just kind of hits you automatically where it's saying like, hey, Paul, like, thanks so much for joining us. Super excited to have you here. Here's a list of some free resources that we offer, or here's download our free ebook, or check out our latest podcast that we just launched. So something of value, but welcoming them into the community, because ultimately that's what you want to build. You want to build that community. I mean, you're all business owners here, and so you understand the stickiness of that. Another thing is the dynamic content and smart segmentation. This is something that you can refer back to later on once you've started to curate your email list, but there is so much opportunity to start to like drill down into the behaviors of a lot of your subscribers and put things in front of them when they're ready to buy, put things in front of them when they're click happy. I mean, that's the benefit of having some of these email softwares, is because it knows what you want to track, and it's already giving it to you in really simplistic form. And so again, that's a little bit for probably further down the road, but utilizing some of those AI technologies that are built into these platforms is a phenomenal way. For example, Brandon, like your signups for franchisees, or Jay, maybe like downloading some of your articles when people are apt and active online, like that. Like there's nothing that beats knowing that data before the customer even knows it, or the subscriber even knows it, and getting it into them when the data shows they're going to be most active in terms of their behavior. So whether that's a day of the week, a time of a time of the day, when you drop a particular subject on a podcast and you double down on that particular subject, yeah, it's a great tool. Another thing is in like creating an interactive space. So maybe like quizzes based on like what kind of I don't know, like what kind of person are you when it comes to X training or longevity or whatever topic that it is that you all speak about on your podcast. It Number one, it's just allowing you to collect their data, but in return, perhaps you would give a protocol or something really easy that you could throw into an AI and pop out that looks and feels customized. That's even more engaging for them to dive deeper into your ecosystem. And then also offering some kind of like exclusive content. I mean, I'm definitely a subscriber of Patreon and different exclusive behind the scenes or more in-depth conversations. And so I'm sure you all are familiar, but Those are really great ways to promote stickiness within your email list. Then, sorry, Eric, did you want to say anything about that? Because we are going to go into the monetization piece.
No, no, not particularly.
Okay.
I mean, the only thing that came to mind, which is not totally non sequitur, is like when you're building your email list, one of the primary things you can do is put every one of your guests on the email list. Like that's
Right.
a no brainer. And I think Fit Insider started 10 years ago, and who knows how big their email list is now, over 100,000 people. But that was it. It was just like a couple friends, and your email could be 20 people, but it's still 20 people that you're building a connection with, and over time it's really critical. So I think, also being very much in the guerrilla mindset of like just grabbing emails whenever you can and shoving them onto your email list.
And then we just kind of did a high level of how to craft engaging email content. So personalization is kind of a no-brainer. Consistent scheduling, huge, huge, huge. Like that would be, to me, the most important thing. Like if you say you do a monthly newsletter, you do a monthly newsletter, and you do it the third Wednesday of every month. Like consistency is key. That's one of the number one drivers from a marketing perspective that we know promotes unsubscribe rates. So consistent scheduling you could do it once a quarter, you could do it once a month, you could do it bi-weekly, but whatever you decide, stick with it, because that audience is very fickle when it comes to that kind of stuff, and the data backs that up. Exclusive content, again, compelling call to actions. That's another thing we talked about. And I just want to have time for the monetization piece, because we all want to make money. So this is how we're going to do it. So Eric, maybe what I'll do is, because we don't have so much time, I'll let you talk about this, and then let's just open up for any kind of questions right after.
Yeah, and back to the other slide too about creating the email newsletters. I think it's I'll just give you guys how I do it, and because it takes me about a half hour, 45 minutes for each episode to create a ton of different content. So I use Riverside. I don't know what you guys use, but I'll download the transcript from there. I'll plug that into Claude, because I think Claude is a better AI solution for Shannon and I disagree on this, which is fine. It's fine. Claude's my guy. Not a huge ChatGPT, but I put all the transcript in there. I give it specific instructions that I want a newsletter that's X amount of words. Now, mind you, I've also given it training data. So I've edited all of my previous newsletters up to this point to get my voice. And then so I give it very specific instructions. I want a YouTube title. I want an email newsletter with so much length. I want a blog of, SEO rich blog up to 2,000 words. I want a LinkedIn post, and something else I ask it for. 1 minute, it's out. I take some edits to it. I throw it into my email newsletter. I change the artwork. And then, I have banners and things like that and send it out. So if you're thinking like an email newsletter needs to be something that you have to, now you can sit there and you can write one each individually. But I can tell you, since I have started doing this and even had to change my subject lines and give me different options for subject lines of the email, my engagement's gone up by about 10%. On my email list, and my clicks have gone up too. So I hate to say it, it's probably just a better version of me writing. And that scares me a little bit. I think, like a lot of people, that it can do that, but it doesn't have to take a lot of time. So, you can do it any you want. If you want to write a very long tailored email, and put some thought into it because you enjoy the craft of writing, then that's awesome. But it doesn't have to be that, for depending on what your purpose is. So, sorry, I just want to touch on that.
Hey, Eric, can you share that quick breakdown you did somewhere else outside of the thing, just kind of your process of taking it
send the prompt
to and from,
like how you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and kind of the places you're putting it. I know you mentioned YouTube, you mentioned newsletter, you mentioned LinkedIn, lead in paragraph, like it'd just be interested to kind of look at it.
Yeah, and it's pretty funny, Brian, because sometimes, like, depending on the guest, is I will send them. I think Dr. Paul Bedford, I did this for you. I sent a link to every single piece of content that I created from the podcast. And when I do it, I'm like, holy shit, I just created all that content from one podcast, and I can't believe I did that. Like, it's pretty astonishing what we can do in a short period of time. So yeah, I can do that. That would actually be a nice little maybe that's an ebook, Brandon.
I think that's a good ebook as long as it's only going to us on this call. I'm joking.
Yeah, no, totally. I don't think I want people knowing how I make the sausage, you know, really. Okay, so what
Spoken
was the
like a
next one we're
true
gonna talk about?
Italian.
Monetization.
The
Yeah,
money
so
piece.
you know,
Make
sponsorship
some
deals.
money.
Yeah, making money. Sponsorship deals. Funny story. I was at a mastermind group last week, and the guy sat next to me was Ben from Inside Tracker, who now works somewhere else. He's like, "Yeah, you know, remember we negotiated your contract for sponsorship?" And I was like, "I think you were the first." And this is amongst your group. I'm like, "I think you were the first paid sponsor." He's like, "Seriously? Really?" I was like, "Yeah," because I've always had sponsors on my podcast, no matter what. So I think first and foremost is like, if your podcast is young or developing it, you should always have some kind of sponsorship placement, whether that's your business, whether it's some easy affiliate deal that you send up, because you always want to send up the flare that people are listening, that you have sponsorship. This is a sponsored podcast. So no matter what, always have at least one sponsorship in there, whether it's paid or not yet, because then you can leverage that into more. So I think one of the big things with the email newsletter when it comes to sponsorship is that it's a high value. Just going over some like recent numbers of my newsletter, like I had a 50% open rate, and my click rate was at least 14 to 15%. So
To
that was
get
a really,
contacts as a marketer, we aim for like 5 to 7. So
yeah.
5 to 7
So
is good.
like, my main sponsors, eGym and GoTeama and Team Up, like they got 300 clicks per email newsletter. So just alone right there, that's a huge line item that you can pack into your sponsorship deals, that you can value appropriately. And that's really like the goal. Like if they want that, that's ultimately what they want, is they want people clicking through. And you can't always see or control um, how many people listen and click through to a sponsor, because that's more of a branding play. So very valuable thing to have a newsletter. Maybe it's not standalone value, but when you package it in to all of your sponsorship deals, it's worth an awful lot. So something that just looks really good when you throw it in there. Premium content. I don't do this, but I know a lot of people do. I think specifically Patreon deals work better for probably the more B2C or direct to consumer type podcasts, where the audiences are a little bit bigger, the Sean Ryans of the world. But you can still do them for B2B, especially if you have, an exclusive content or reports that you give to people. Like for mine, if I want to do an exclusive quarterly report to executives within the industry, and that would be a really worthwhile thing. I just haven't, it's been on my mind. I just haven't done it yet. Right. But I think that's something that's very powerful. And affiliate marketing, I think you guys all are familiar with how affiliate marketing works. If not, it's basically you're going off a performance metric, how many you actually sell of a particular product. I think for the audiences that I know you guys have, if I was going to do an affiliate marketing, I would do something that's extremely high priced, so that if you do sell one or two throughout the year, it's actually worth your time. If you're going to try to sell like athletic greens and you're going to get, $1 per subscription, I just don't think we have that type of audience. But for, once again, let's bring up eGym because they're top of mind. These guys sell one package to a health club. We're talking, over $100,000 per sale, and I get a percentage of that. Or V has huge sale amounts and really nice affiliate deals. So they're definitely out there, specific to who you want to sell to. But I would go big. And then also you can have those ads running which show that you are aligned with a specific brand. So there's a lot of value to an affiliate marketing for having your personal brand, your podcast brand aligned with another brand from the perspective of the listener and the consumer. So just some thoughts on all of those things.
And then one thing, I'm not sure if this is valuable because we're kind of at the end of our half an hour, but do you guys want to know how Eric reaches out to brands to kind of procure these deals? Is that of interest, or should we just get into questions?
I can just tell you. So a lot of times, if I have a particular brand that I want to work with, I invite them on a podcast interview. You make a lot of friends that way.
So as far as, I guess, just wrapping this up, because again, we only allocated like half an hour, but in terms of building an email list, we will make sure to get you the prompts and just the outline of like where we're to be posting this, how to promote it. We'll send you this deck. Is there anything else that would be valuable for any of you to better understand at this point to help you launch as successfully as possible? Or perhaps you already have one, but it's still in a little dead and you need a couple of ideas or strategies to revive your email list.
Can I ask?
Hi, it's Vanessa. Sorry,
ahead,
I don't know
Vanessa.
if you can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, Severiano.
Okay. Sorry, I'm like in the car, so I know my thing is on the phone. Anyway, so I just wanted to ask a question about audience growth through the email list. Like, I obviously it works both ways, but are there any other recommendations that you have for developing the audience and growing the audience in addition to the email list? Because as I'm thinking about relaunching my podcast, that's kind of top of mind.
I mean, Eric, go ahead, but 100%.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it's not just audience growth, but it's the level of engagement you have with your audience. It deepens the relationship, which audience growth and numbers are an amazing thing. Of course, you want to have bigger reach, but I think the most valuable, I know the most valuable thing you can have with your audience is the depth of relationship you have, how often they listen, what they think of your brand, how they engage with your brand, because I'd much rather have 1,000 listeners who are deeply engaged with my content than 5,000 who kind of loosely come and go and, can take it or leave it. So that's definitely one thing. But yeah, I mean, as you build your email list, maybe through alternative ways, like if you're at an event, you collect things, or we're doing a webinar, you're bringing in new people into your ecosystem, LinkedIn,
that's a
all
huge
those
thing.
things.
Because Vanessa, one of the things that I would recommend, are you B2B or B2C for your podcast?
Choose B2B.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So LinkedIn, this is quite new. They have now an opportunity for you to say, like, join my newsletter. This is the new call to action that you can embed in the top of your pages. Y'all are in groups, right? Fitness focus groups, health and wellness focus groups, places where your audience actually are. So you can have that on the top of your profile. I think you can invite like 100 people every other day now to follow your page. You can have that at the top of your page. You can promote, really great content, whether it's like just reposting reports that you found really valuable or your take on something. I think that's a really useful, a great way to build your listenership, because what you're going to do on those newsletters is you're going to embed your podcast on it, right? So you're going to say, like, click here to listen to the latest podcast about X. So you're literally hitting them on LinkedIn, you're hitting them on Instagram. You're pulling them into your ecosystem by using a link tree on your Instagram and Facebook, and then you're pulling them into your ecosystem on LinkedIn by using that join my newsletter call to action button. And so you can DM people and be like, hey, I thought you'd find this like really interesting. If you want that kind of like one-on-one approach, because you're B2B, it might be a little bit more hyper targeted. Or you can just post content that is kind of catching GLP-1, for example, right now, post content on something that people are searching for, actively looking at, and then putting the link to your newsletter at the bottom. So whether that's a landing page that you have or just, an email subscription that you're using on like Brevo. So I think those are also ways to push people to listen to your podcast. You're just doing it in a kind of like a backwards fashion, as opposed to pulling your listeners to your newsletter. You're literally pulling your audience to your newsletter to push them to your podcast, if that makes sense.
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. And sorry, Jay, you said you had a question too?
Yeah, I have a question if you don't mind. So I I don't have an email list that's set up specifically for my podcast. I have an email list that's set up for my business, which the podcast is kind of,
Yep.
sibling to. And so I always send an email to my business email list saying, hey, I've got a new podcast up. Here's a link to it. Here's what you might learn from it, that kind of thing. And I'm wondering if I should, in addition to that, have one that's just specifically for the podcast. I think there's some similarities among the audiences, but they're not entirely the same. And I don't know if that would be overkill, or what do you think about that?
I think it would be overkill, and the only reason is because the whole purpose is to own your list, right? I think where your opportunity lies is when you might have a product or a service or an affiliate deal. That's when you would segment that list and be like, hey, my business list might not be the same audience that would purchase this thing. However, the list that I've identified is like, do you categorize your list? Do you tag them? Do you know who's who?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I think it would be overkill in terms of the newsletter. However, when you do have deals, when you do have an opportunity to make money, when you are talking to potential sponsors, that's when you can like send or segment an email directly to a particular cohort or group. Other than that, I think you're doing just great. It's just a matter of, you might need to add like an extra paragraph or an extra section that you think would kind of speak to an audience that you don't necessarily feel is being spoken to.
Okay.
But that can also be things like embedding a button that's like, hey, enjoying this, click here for more resources, or click here for the podcast that I've done on this topic, right? So it's not like pushing it in their face, but it's at least highlighting like, hey, from a business perspective, these are some of the podcasts that I think you'll find really helpful or beneficial. Click here and then have a curated list of your podcasts that you think they would enjoy. So
Okay.
I think that's another option too. And it'll boost your listenership for those particular podcasts, which is evergreen. And then you probably already make content, hopefully, for them. So you're just literally using an old thumbnail or something that you've already created for social media, popping it in and putting a little button number.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no worries.
Cool. Any other questions, you guys?
I will say, even though every marketer will tell you no, don't do this, we have purchased some lists and they have been quite good. We have purchased, for example, like an idea list, an Ursa list. We have purchased, I think there's a couple other lists that we have actually purchased. Everybody says don't purchase, but if you can build a strong enough strategy to deal with a cold audience, especially when you know they're already in your niche, it can be advantageous. And so I just want to put that out there as well. I think you have to do it very strategically. If you want me to do like a 30-minute breakdown another time in the future of how to actually do this so that, number one, you're not going to get blocked. And number two, how to really pull the warm leads out of that cold list. I'm more than happy to do like a 30-minute session on that. But most people will tell you no, and best practices is no. However, because we're in such a niched like industry, the lists exist. They're going to the conferences, they're signing up, they're subscribing, they are there. It's just a matter of doing it in a way that's, number one, ethical, and number two, isn't going to turn them off of your brand.
Shannon, can I just ask a question? Those lists you purchased, were those directly from Idea and Ursa?
Yeah.
Because I get emails almost every day from scrapers going 100,000 clubs. And I'm thinking, yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of scrapers. Some of the scrapers are pretty good, I must say, because that's what they do. But yes, you can purchase them directly from the organization, or at least an affiliate of the organization, to have a little bit of that like continuity of, yes, this is indeed what it says it is. Like if you're getting offered 10,000 emails that are 100% proofed in terms of their legitimacy and their relevance, and it's like $300, probably not real. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Awesome. Well, I think we did it, but if there's anything else that anyone needs, I think our follow-up for everyone that joined here, I'm going to send you the deck. I'm going to include Eric's prompts in there with everything that he does. If you want to use it as a working model or a framework, absolutely. And yeah, feel free to message us back and let us know anything that we can cover next time, because we're trying to do these quarterly and we just want to add value to the podcast community, because we want to win and we want everyone that's podcasting with us to win. And so, it's a great hobby, but we want to make money off of our hobbies too.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. We'll follow